Hey everybody, we are Martin, Robert, and Francis, and this is Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head, rent-free. Hey, welcome back to Snakes and Otters. I am Martin.
I'm Francis.
And I'm Robert.
Alright, so today, we're going to do what we always call a reach-back episode.
I love these.
As opposed to a reach-around episode.
Be careful now.
There, I had to use it.
Dude, I'm so jealous. That's the best joke we've told in the whole set of episodes. That's the best. I'm so jealous.
It's the bourbon, gentlemen. That's what it does. Woodford Reserve is what we got going on today.
Yes, everybody's got a full glass of Woodford Reserve here, and we're hitting the bourbon and recording episode 12. So this is a reach back to when we talked about Christopher Clark's The Sleepwalkers. Mm-hmm. And we talked about the origins of World War I and who's to blame. And I staked out a position about, the Russians engineered the whole thing. But something we didn't talk about, and it's kind of weird, we just kind of mentioned him in passing, is Franz Ferdinand. To us, 100 years later, he's almost a MacGuffin.
If we even know who he is at all.
Yeah, he's the briefcase in Pulp Fiction. He's the Maltese Falcon.
I love that image you created.
That's a great analogy.
That is a Martin-ism, shall we say? Because you're the one that came up with that one.
Yeah, he's just a guy in a funny hat that gets shot and starts all this off. But why? Why was he worth shooting? What is it about Franz Ferdinand that shooting him, of all people, touches off the death of millions of people?
That's right. One man. How can any one man be that important?
Yeah, how did it get so much of a mess? So what did I want to do, though, is I want to get you guys telling me some initial thoughts. And I think, though, a general biographical sketch of Franz Ferdinand is going to be important here.
Yeah, because we don't know him. We should know him, because so much of who we are today stems from what happened in World War I. 100 years later, we've forgotten most of it. Our grandparents probably served in World War II, if we're lucky, if we're of the right age, like most of us are. But World War I is beyond us. It's 4 generations back for most of us, and our memory is only 3. We can't go beyond that.
My grandfather served in World War I.
Mine did too, that's correct. But he died when I was 6 years old.
Well, and my parents were born in 34 and 35, so they didn't get...
And my father was born...
My parents are much younger. My parents were born at the end of the Second World War.
My father was born in 35. So he remembered a little bit, but his father was only 16 when the war ended. So a lot of that... And World War II overshadows so much of that.
Yeah, it was bigger.
That's correct.
And media more mature, so there's more...
And it was
far more global,
media,
really.
More media, more
Don't
everything.
underestimate the power of Pearl Harbor, too. It became ours there. Whereas World War I...
You're so right.
Because World War I was never really ours. Lusitania is as close as we got to making it, well, maybe it should be.
Well, we joined the party late, but we did close it down.
That's correct.
That's
right.
true.
We
may have gotten to the party a little late, but we were the last ones out the door.
Yeah, we closed the club down.
That's exactly right. And we talked a little bit about that with Wilson. Not very much, but not too much. But Franz Ferdinand is a enigma in many ways because he should never have been anybody. As we get into his biography,
well, the way he almost isn't... Because your analogy about the briefcase in Pulp Fiction is great because he's not necessarily... Francis, you said, who is this man that was worth... however 20 million odd lives.
That's right.
Yeah.
But really, in a way, he's still not, because so much of World War I was set up. It didn't matter what the spark was.
Right.
Whatever the spark ended up being, the same results would have happened.
That's correct.
So in a way, he's not terribly consequential, only in the sense that he is that spark.
That's right.
In my opinion.
He just happened to be that.
Right.
Yeah. It could have been anything that did this, and you might even say this was inevitable.
Yeah, World War I, and honestly, in some ways, I think it was.
It just so happened that this was the way that it all went.
May not have happened exactly then. May not even have rolled out exactly the same way. But there was going to be war in Europe.
Right. And we've talked a little bit about the reasons for that. And the fact,
I mean, we hit that pretty hard with Christopher Clark. And again, that's an
it
amazing book.
It was a mindset issue more than anything else.
Yes. An amazing book.
That we've grown out of, I'd like to think. Only because of the event itself. We could only understand the horrors of war because World War I happened. Because even before that, all that before was a glorification of the art of war. Even the Civil War was close, but not quite a war is hell type thing. But think about all the British colonialism, French colonialism, and all that sort of thing going on. It was a gentleman's game. It was a way to go forth and do great things. And World War I showed us, no, it is a terrible, ruddy, awful business. And we've kept that understanding ever since. Mm-hmm. We just don't know it.
Yeah.
So, why is he a doofus again? I mean, why is he the linchpin here?
So, what makes him worth shooting? I mean, of all the people that you are worth shooting in this world,
why did he get to become the briefcase? What? Yeah, that's an interesting.
So the biographical sketch is
you got to get into his bio to really understand
what's going on here. But he wasn't supposed to be the heir apparent anyway. Archduke Franz Joseph and his wife,
who was the current emperor, who reigned for 60 plus
years. His wife, Empress Elizabeth, who, by the way, as an aside, she ends up assassinated too in Geneva in like the 1880s. That didn't cause anybody to go to war.
You'd think the Empress would be a bigger deal.
Yeah.
But she's not.
They do have a son, Archduke Rudolph.
And he's the only child they have?
I don't think so, but he's the male child.
He's the only male child.
He's originally the heir apparent. He is a huge horn dog. And so much so, he ends up infecting his wife, Princess Stephanie of Belgium, with a venereal disease so badly it sterilizes her.
Dare I ask which venereal disease did she have?
I don't think it's recorded.
I know. Such unfortunate details are just fun to speculate.
I would guess it would be syphilis.
That's my guess. That's
correct.
Yes,
it's most likely.
Yeah.
So he was such a horn dog that he ends up in a murder-suicide with his 17-year-old mistress.
Who was not a commoner. She was actually
a baroness.
Noble. Yeah, baroness, yeah.
But 17, and he had begun a relationship.
How much older was he?
He was in his 30s.
Okay.
He, again, the family muddled the investigation, of course.
Can we say Me Too? Oh, wait, sorry, different show.
He thought himself sweetly dangerous with the ladies, as you said.
So, but what we do know is they're both dead in a room with a gun. Yeah. So that passes Franz Joseph's heir apparency on to Franz Ferdinand's father, who dies of dysentery, I think it is, in the 1890s.
Right, which is Rudolph's brother, correct?
No.
No,
Franz Joseph's brother.
Franz Joseph's brother. Okay, I want to make sure.
Yeah, because Rudolph was an only child.
Rudolph was an only child. Okay, yeah, it's believe it or not, it is important, all these familial connections.
Yeah. The main thing to understand is Franz Ferdinand is heir apparent because of a sex scandal.
Yeah, of his cousin.
Of his cousin, basically. So the other interesting thing, though, is he's pretty much the opposite of Rudolph. When he marries for love. It's not an arranged marriage. His wife is not even of royal blood. That's why Franz Joseph wasn't even going to allow the marriage until they agreed that it would be morganatic. In other words, that the title would not pass on, the emperor title would not pass on to any of Franz Ferdinand's children.
He gets to be emperor, but he cannot have any of his descendants.
Right. He would become emperor on Franz Joseph's death, but he could not pass it on to his children. He didn't care. He actually loved his wife.
That's right. Yeah.
From all accounts, was completely faithful.
That's right. He's actually a very great love story, if I recall correctly.
Sophie is a.
She's a wonderful woman.
Yeah, he is on record as saying it's the smartest thing he ever did was marrying Sophie. And they had 3 children, and quite a great love story.
If you wanted to see this actually on film, the Young Indiana Jones Chronicles did a very, very good episode where young Corey Carrier was the actor, who meets little Sophie before the daughter before, which is around 1914, which is before the war begins.
She's about 12.
Yes, it's exactly that. And
a little romance there.
A little romance there, but you actually get to meet Franz Ferdinand and his wife Sophie. And they recognize that things cannot be. And it's actually, George Lucas did a very, very good job with this. And I'll give him credit. This was an awesome representation, as the whole series was, of many great things that happened around this time.
But just to give you a little bit more in the biographical sketch, again, being this opposite person is a common theme throughout Franz Ferdinand's life.
He was never what was expected.
He was looking forward to being the autocrat. He considered himself that basically his shit didn't stink. I mean, we've used that phrase before about these
his
autocrats.
Father,
he wanted to be in the tradition of his uncle Franz Joseph.
That's right, because Franz Joseph was very much an autocrat, which worked well in the late 1800s. But the world was changing.
The world's changing, and Franz Ferdinand sees that.
So
on the other hand,
there it is.
He wants to rebuild the empire. He thinks the only thing that will save the Habsburg legacy is to dismantle what his uncle has built and do a broader power sharing between all the nationalities of the empire.
And this gets known.
Which is a very odd thing for an autocrat to think.
That's right.
When you think about
exactly.
it.
He's progressive in the best sense of the word. He is truly a visionary in many respects.
But
he was long before his time.
He wants to share power, but only as a preservation of his own power. He doesn't want to hand it off to somebody else. I mean, it's not about
that sort
democracy.
of thing never works.
That's right.
It's never going to work.
He does not wish for democracy. It's not even in his wheelhouse. And there's something to be said for that, because he can only do what he is known to do.
Yeah. Well, and that's the only model he knows. Because I mean, when you look at the British monarchy, they were not quite the total figureheads that they are now. I mean, they're not technically total figureheads. Theoretically, there is power that they could exercise.
Oh, absolutely, they are still very much head of state.
But
in many respects,
if anybody did some of the stuff that they could actually still do, they'd probably get laughed at, and we'd probably see the end of the monarchy. But it's the only model he knew. And sharing power is you're either going to end up with what we have today with the British monarchy, or you're going to have Louis XVI.
Yeah, which
there is no other model, because every other model where the people who are not nobly born ends up like the United States or ends up like Russia.
Yeah.
The Soviet Union.
I mean, he looked at America, and there was some like, oh, we're going to do the United States of Austria as me as the head, and all these nationalities are going to have this, power sharing thing going on.
And never mind the fact those nationalities have never gotten along, and never will.
That's right.
And
they're too much of a, dare I say, polyglot. That's one of your favorite. I love that word. They're too
balkanized.
That's right. Well, they're too. Believe it or not, they're too diverse. They don't get along because of those differences, and it's not a question of, they don't want to get along. Whereas the diversity, if you say it today, it's everybody wants a seat at the table. Nobody wants a seat at the table. They want the other people to go away so they can have the table all to themselves.
And that's a big part of it, because that's where he is with the Hungarians. That's a lot of his thing about sharing power isn't so much recognizing these other nationalities. It's, I don't trust the Hungarians. We've got to water them down.
That's right, because they are the power base here.
Yeah.
In many respects, the Austro-Hungarian Empire shouldn't even exist. It's only the Habsburg that have kind of happened to be the heads of it that are where they're
Mashed it together and trying to make it work.
Exactly, but there's the Austrian contingent and there's the Hungarian contingent, which aren't the same. Hungarians are more Slavic than they are Germanic.
Yes.
And so therefore, and they have their own history, their own background, their own culture.
This is not unlike the Czechoslovakia.
That's correct. There's no such
use
thing.
A modern example.
Or Yugoslavia, the old time.
That's probably a better example.
Putting these diverse people together and trying to make them get along, it only works in the presence of an autocrat.
Well, yeah. Now, to be fair, though, those people were together for nearly 1,000 years.
That's right. Yeah.
So it's not like they hadn't been.
There's a history here.
A country. They wouldn't have thought about it as a country the way we do today.
Yeah. There's no sense of nationalism here.
Right. But they were part of a political unity, because they were part of the Holy Roman Empire. Now, maybe not from the very beginning, because those borders early on were a little bit nebulous.
Everything's shifting. Yeah.
But very quickly, though, they would have been an early part. the princes who ruled they were electors of the Holy Roman Empire. That's how the Habsburgs became the Habsburgs.
Yeah. And then again, that's that flip side of this is he wants all this reform, and he wants to look at power sharing. He sees it as a way of heading off the friction with Serbia.
Which is the problem.
But at the same time, again, he still sees himself as this is protecting my legacy as the autocrat.
That's a good point about Yugoslavia there.
Yeah.
About Serbia. The Austro-Hungarian Empire encompasses not just what we would call today Austria and Hungary, but also what would have, for a while anyways, been Yugoslavia, correct?
Part of it, Bosnia.
Just Bosnia?
Bosnia.
No,
Serbia is independent. Keep in mind, Serbia wins their independence from the Ottoman Empire. But they border because of Bosnia.
That's right, because the weak man of Europe, the Ottoman Empire, cannot hold them together.
Yeah.
Well, they're ethnically and religiously different.
Yeah.
The Serbians are not Muslims. They're Eastern Christians at this point.
Yeah.
So the fact
It's
that the
Orthodox.
Ottomans were in charge of them is it's something that's untenable over a long period of time.
Yeah.
So they're actually independent, but they're in the midst, this little bitty place, in the midst of all of these great empires surrounding them.
Mm-hmm.
It's only
the Russian Empire.
So
and
either
Austro-Hungary.
all the empires fall, which is ultimately what happens.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's pretty much what happened.
That's right. Or it gets absorbed into one of them, which is what was attempted.
But he's
imperialism
just
only thrives without that.
Yeah, so I mean, at the same time as being this reformer,
he recognizes the need, but he doesn't understand how.
Yeah, and he's just this dour, formal. He considered himself, this great, noble prince. His castle at Konopishch in Bohemia is stuffed to the rafters with stuff he's killed.
Yes. I talked about this pre-show. The current Habsburg descendant that is responsible for the legacy, Karl.
Yeah.
That castle in Bohemia is the main place where a lot of that legacy is displayed, and it's like a semi-living museum to the Habsburgs. Because this one of these I remember distinctly.
Open to the public?
Yes. Yes.
There you go.
All of the animals that have been killed. I mean, it's very much a hunting lodge / castle.
Yeah.
He's said to have killed like 5,000 deer. Yeah. Maybe 100,000 other
antlers make up a lot of the light fixtures. I mean, it's very rustic.
Yeah. So I mean, he would run people off of his land and threaten to shoot them because he didn't want anybody taking any animal that he might shoot.
Beyond the obvious role as the heir apparent, prior to that and even after, what was his role in his uncle's government? Did he have any?
He was very much a part of the military.
Okay.
And we've talked about a little bit about Conrad von Hotzendorf, the chief of staff.
Uh-huh.
That he was one of Franz Ferdinand's people.
Okay.
He got brought in to be the chief of staff of the Austrian army.
So it wasn't like he was just some doofus off in the corner with grandiose ideas.
That's right.
He was actually part of the power.
He was not marginalized because he was the heir apparent. Franz Joseph, what did he think of him, though? He didn't think very highly of him, if I recall correctly.
No, he didn't. And again, the whole wedding thing, why would you do this? Why would you marry this who's so below you? I mean, again, Sophie Hotek she is of noble blood. She's just not royal.
That's right. And that's a very distinct difference.
But, again, Franz Joseph married to a royal.
Yeah.
Rudolph was married to a royal. It's something you did in this very conventional Vienna court.
Which is why they have the years they do,
Yeah, you stuck by the rules, and Franz Joseph was a stickler for that.
Yeah.
But Franz Ferdinand was not unprepared.
Right, so
to come in.
Where I was going with that is he basically had, not only would he have the title, and the power that goes with the title, he had influence in the court already.
Yes.
So if he had lived past the death of his uncle and became the emperor, he could have actually gone pretty far in implementing these reforms,
which he is on record as espousing.
Yeah. Again, depending on where the Hungarians fell.
Right.
Talk to me more about that. That's something I don't quite get. The understanding of the Hungarian power base here. What is their take on all this?
They're the only other ones besides the Austrians that have any power.
That's right. They're
How do they have power?
In merging the two crowns.
right.
Right, but I mean, what is their base? Is it because they have land? Is it because
you
they
can't do
have
anything without their approval?
Well, they have the population because they actually outnumber the Austrians.
And they make up a significant part of the army.
That's right.
okay?
And
There you go.
again, foreign policy has to be determined through the Hungarians.
Yeah, and that's
They have a prime minister who has a great deal of power, and they do have to run pretty much whatever is being done. You got to get the Hungarians on board.
Okay,
so that's kind of where this ends up.
which is why he wants to dilute their power.
Yes, he doesn't trust them. He wants to dilute their power.
the Austrians are still in charge, at least nominally,
Yeah.
but he's attempting to solidify that.
Yes.
Let's
And
squeeze them out, basically.
he wants to marginalize them, and at the same time, again, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on his motives. He does want to end the friction with these other nationalities, in particular the Slavic nationalities.
Right.
He is on record as saying, if we give these people power in the empire, then all of these people that are stirring up trouble from the outside, hint, hint, Serbians, they have nothing to offer.
Right.
Now, there is a lot of wisdom in that.
That's right.
Yeah.
And which goes back to our original premise: is he a doofus or is he a visionary, or what point in between?
Is he a
that is he?
visionary martyr or a visionary or a doofus martyr?
That's
He could be all three.
Yeah, I was gonna
They
say,
are not
because-
mutually exclusive.
Not at all. That's
Yeah.
right. Because ultimately, yeah, he's a martyr. He got shot. He's dead.
Yeah.
So-
he's dead now.
The thing about, I guess, whether or not he's a doofus or a visionary or both, depends on really, ultimately, what that power sharing would have looked like.
Yeah.
And
Because-
that's, do we really know?
Yeah, see, that's the thing.
You don't know. Again, he's just spitballing at this point. But
Right, because until his uncle is dead, that's all he can do.
yeah,
That's all he can
none
do.
of it
That's
matters
right.
because Franz Joseph's not moving
That's
on
right.
any of this.
Who is? It was a supreme autocrat.
Yeah.
He is. I mean, he is not sharing
The last-
power with anything.
Yeah,
He's
the
one of the
monarch
last.
of the old school is what
That's
he
right.
tells Theodore Roosevelt.
Yeah.
So where all this hinges, though, what I think you get to is, why does he scare the Serbians so badly? And that's Bosnia. Because if he's right, and they give like the Bosnians some power, some say, some representation, and they stop listening to the Serbians, then the Serbian dream of Greater Serbia is meaningless. They have no more influence. And that's what frightens the Black Hand.
Basically, he cuts them off at the knees.
If it works.
If he comes to power.
That's why he
and he's
frightens
gone on
the Serbians.
record on numerous occasions stating, "This is my vision."
To me,
Whether it's
that would
possible
make
or
a
not.
great what if.
Yeah, I like this.
Because I mean, when you think about the style of government that he's coming from, and the style of government that could work. There's a lot of ways he could have done it that would have blown up in his face.
Right, absolutely.
Because if he gives them too much power, real power,
Yeah,
then it could fracture the empire such that it is to
That's
begin
right.
with.
That's right.
If he gives them too little, the Serbians will keep having an influence.
That's right. Where is that?
And he'll piss off the Hungarians at the same time.
That's
Yes.
exactly right. So this is a very nuanced, subtle way of working that he's got to just push just enough to be able to give them enough that they're satisfied without actually changing the way things are. Because that can't happen.
Yeah.
Well,
For his autocracy.
he doesn't want stuff to change. He just doesn't want his stuff to change.
Well, that's right. Yeah, he's still got to be.
That's what
And
makes
it's
it
one
tricky.
of those things of, well, okay, but if you light that candle, can you put it back out?
Right.
Well, it's kind of like they said in Star Trek. Bella Oxmick says, I'm all for unity. I just got to be the unity.
Right.
Same thing here.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just quote a little bit here from Wikipedia, but it's an Italian historian, Leo Valiani. Francis Ferdinand was a prince of absolutist inclinations, but he had certain intellectual gifts and undoubted moral earnestness.
Yeah, I can see that.
Intellectual gifts and moral earnestness.
I mean,
I like that.
That's such a conflict. How can you have moral earnestness
And be an absolute.
and absolute that's so foreign.
Oh,
to
well,
us.
I tell you
actually-
exactly how.
Well-
Yeah, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right, Hobbes says absolutely that's the way it is. The Leviathan, with regards to the enlightened despot, is the only viable way of government for him. Franz Ferdinand is extremely Hobbesian. I think that I know what's best, and I love you people, and I'm going to make sure.
This is hard. I probably have the broadest egalitarian streak of the three of us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so this to me is like, you're kidding me, right? This can't.
Seriously, no, but that was the philosophy that was behind this. I guarantee you.
Yeah,
that
no.
Go ahead.
I would disagree on that part.
Go ahead. Take
That
it.
is specifically Hobbesian, bearing in mind that I've not seen if he has referenced Hobbes or not. Okay?
Right, I understand.
Because I would say this: it is
smells
not
like it.
It is not Hobbesian.
Okay.
It is Catholic.
Okay.
Now that's a big part.
Yeah, it is Catholic,
The empire
because
is heavily Catholic.
it is
and
heavily
he-
Catholic.
He
Explain-
considers
explain
He
himself-
is
thyself.
extremely Catholic.
Yes.
It is. That's right.
I mean that when you say Habsburg, that's what you mean. You mean Catholic.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
So the Catholic ideal is not a representative democracy,
No.
not a Greek style everybody gets a vote democracy,
Correct.
which is totally unworkable.
Plato
outside of
himself said it's impossible.
Yeah. It is the benevolent monarch.
That's right. The enlightened
Okay.
despot.
No, because for a Catholic, he would not be a despot. He would be enlightened.
That's
he would
correct.
not be a
Well,
despot.
Despot is the term that Hobbes used, and I think that granted, this guy wrote long before.
But it's
any of
a
this.
different mindset, though, especially from the way you explained it. Now,
Okay, yeah. Give me
if
the
he has
nuance.
if he has a different definition of his own, that's fine. But the benevolent despot, as in I know it's right, and therefore I'm going to do it for you.
That's right.
That's not the Catholic way. The Catholic way, the monarch serves the people for their good.
That's right.
Now, he may know what is best,
That's right.
but he doesn't impose it because he knows what's best, because he's, I'm the only way. And this is the ideal. Doesn't necessarily always work this
That's
way,
right.
obviously.
Gotcha. Okay.
But the ideal is, I believe this is what is good and right. Therefore, that's what we do because it is good and right.
Not just because I say so.
Not just because I say so.
Yeah.
There's an inherent goodness and rightness about it, which, when you bring in the morality part that you just talked about, makes far more sense.
Yeah.
Well, in many respects, you're talking about divine right of kings.
Yes.
That's very right.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Because God Himself informs the enlightened ruler, shall we say, and tells him what's good and right, that the unenlightened individuals of the populace cannot comprehend. That's Hobbes. I don't know if
That's
what-
Hobbes. I don't think that would be the Catholic view.
No.
Because again,
Well, but in 1900,
well,
might have been.
this obviously is going to be tempered with I am the ruler.
That's right. We look at this from 20th
and there's
century.
a power, but the ideal still would have been we do what is right. And there have been monarchs. Louis in France, he's a saint for a reason.
That's correct.
Saint Wenceslas,
That's right.
he is a saint for a reason. These are men that tried to serve their people or were particularly holy.
Well,
But
I
in
mean,
the end,
even
we
so,
have-
Louis XIV was very good at being the autocrat,
He was.
but only to the extent that he thought he was right. He wasn't always.
Right. Yes.
And so often is the case with all of these. They're not always right. That's the
Yeah,
problem.
and that's the thing.
that's-
We're all human. Mistakes can be made.
That's correct.
I'm just talking about the ideal.
They get something in their head they think is right, for all the right reasons, and they roll with it, and that's what we're
Could be
talking about.
totally wrong.
And I think
Yeah.
that's what exactly right.
Yeah, and just 2 points that, one, we have no way of knowing now, obviously,
Right,
because
of
he got
course.
shot,
That's
where
right.
Franz Ferdinand would have fallen on that. And two, again, my broad egalitarian streak says the only moral course is representative republic. But that's a subject for another.
Well, that of course that
is not
assumes
precluded.
No, not at all.
But-
that assumes only that the republic that is representative is intellectually, that's not a good word for it, but that's a possibility. But at least in some fashion is able to make a true moral good decision for the people.
That's the thing.
There you go.
If it's not informed by morals,
Yeah.
then it falls into what is very similar today. I'm not saying our country is immoral, although it could very well be. What I'm saying is that it falls into a balkanization because you have competing interests.
I was hoping that word would come up because it's
it's so appropriate for the subject.
the subject.
Whereas the monarch, the whole point of that is to help prevent the balkanization of the various groups.
Yeah.
It's the only way to do good for the most.
But hopefully, you can do good for all.
For all, that's correct. That's right.
But anyways,
Well, to me, the only way to do good is to limit the government and let the people decide what their good is on their own, because the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
that's just as much a good intention as any other.
Well, that's correct. I mean, it goes back to the Franklinism. Why should I trade one tyrant 3,000 miles away
for 3,000 tyrants 1 mile away? The thing is, though, and I'm not saying personally, I prefer a representative.
We're Americans and very proud to be Americans. We don't want to have a king.
Yeah, right.
We don't want to have even though we're talking positively
we don't
about
want
the
an
idea of it.
autocrat. But that's assuming there was such a thing as an enlightened autocrat. We know it's not possible because autocracy, I think, pollutes or toxifies the
I think
entire
you can
concept.
probably find enough monarchs throughout history that did well and right by their people to say no, that's not true. I think
that's probably a subject for another episode. But I think Louis XIV is probably a good example of that. He actually did in there a very good way of taking care of his people by making sure that the bureaucracy that went around him that ruled everything was kept in check.
Well, and again,
By his
that's
own
very Catholic.
autocracy. That's very Catholic. That's right.
Because you're talking about giving as much power to as many people, that is still very much in line because we have what we call subsidiarity and solidarity.
Right.
Subsidiarity
Local.
is what the libertarians love to seize on,
Yes.
and that is you do everything at the lowest possible level.
That's right.
Yes.
Everything's local. That's to the extent
The only
that it
problem
can
with
be.
that is there are certain things that you cannot do at the very lowest possible level.
Defense of the realm. For
Yeah,
example.
I mean, you can't blow up Iraqis at the local level
Right. So, you cannot
if they're the threat, or the Iranians.
Or the Iranians.
Whatever
exactly.
you want to call it.
You can't send a missile to Russia if you're doing everything at the local village level, right?
Yes.
Not that I want to send missiles to Russia.
That's right.
But the other thing is, though, there things that you cannot handle locally, then can the next level of organization above it handle it?
Preamble of the Declaration is pretty good.
Then it should.
That out.
Yeah.
If that level can't handle it, then you go up. But that's where you start. You start at the bottom and you work your way up. Now, there's some things that obviously are only at the top level. Defense of the realm.
That's right. Provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and pursue the blessings of liberty that are ourselves and our posterity. We got that. Establish this Constitution. That's where it's all laid out, and that's intended.
We probably can't really quote Schoolhouse Rock because that's copyrighted.
No, that's okay. We understand whether
Fair use doctrine.
It's fair use, yes. As long as we don't quote the whole thing, you can
I
quote
wasn't
up to a certain
singing
amount.
it. I was simply laying it. Okay, you were singing.
And it was going through my head.
Which is, in many respects, the brilliance of that entire
Isn't it,
program.
though?
That's right, because
To imagine
our
it's still in our
generation,
head 40 years
our
later.
generations, exactly.
I'd
50s,
love to see somebody
we get
update
it.
that animation with that same audio,
Yeah.
or close to it, and redo those.
That's correct, because
Because
it was
it's
an amazing.
too crude for today's
They'll ruin
standards.
them.
But
That's true.
The DVDs have been very, very popular. Lots of folks remember them. Anybody our age.
True. All right, so we're
50
getting
plus.
pretty far afield here.
Yes, we're at about 35 minutes, so I just wanted to bring you guys back around to something. Why was he worth shooting? Because he scared the crap
Out of the
out of the
Serbians.
Serbians.
There's
Yes.
no question
They
as to that.
seriously thought he might be successful in this.
Well, I think that's exactly the problem. Is because he could have been that whole Hobbesian enlightened despot's not the right word. I know you have a problem with that. Autocrat, as it were, to be able to share power in any stretch of the imagination. They thought he actually might have succeeded. Mm-hmm. He had spoken well enough and articulately enough that he was to the point where oh my God, this might work.
Obviously,
Right.
they understood the concept he was going for, if not the particulars.
That's right. He
Yeah.
was on record enough
Yeah.
with consistently that this would have been, he's attempting to maintain the empire in a quasi-democratic manner. That's unheard of. Nobody could handle that. It's one of the reasons like Jesus Christ was crucified, because he represented a threat to the power base. Same issue
Yeah.
here.
Which, oddly enough, he didn't really.
Yeah, you might be pushing just a little. I'm not sure I see Franz Ferdinand as a Christ-like figure.
Well, no.
No, but he is a threat to the
I
existing...
like where you went, though.
He is a threat to the existing power base. There's no question, because the power base is the
In
Serbians
Serbia.
in Serbia.
He's a threat to
the only
Serbia.
reason Serbia cares is because they want allies. They want their own. They want nationalism.
They want all the Serbians.
They want
throughout.
They want
Yes.
a fracturization of the empire.
So that they can graft on places like
That's right.
Bosnia.
It's an intention for their own increase of power, and he is a threat to that increase of power.
Is there any historical evidence of the Hungarians supporting, even mildly, or at least looking the other way, with the Serbs? Since obviously he was a threat to the Hungarians as well.
Really, the only guy banging the drum for war, and we talked about this a little bit when we talked to Christopher Clark, is Hotzendorf.
Mm-hmm.
He's the guy that has repeatedly, and like every 6 months, said, we got to go to war with Serbia. This is never going to be over till we got to go to war with Serbia.
Well, because think about that. That
The
makes great sense.
The Hungarians don't want to do it.
Well,
Franz
because
Ferdinand doesn't want to do it.
we want empire. This is ultimately what we're talking about here. Is a philosophical argument between the concept of imperial power versus nationalistic power, large versus small, ethnic versus non-ethnic.
I think the Serbians probably would have been perfectly happy with the Serbian Empire. And granted, it would have been pretty puny.
But ultimately,
That's exactly their goal.
that's
Yeah,
exactly
to
their goal.
graft places
Leave
like
me
Bosnia.
alone. Let me do things my Serbian way. And they think that the Bosnians and the others would be better served on their own rather than in a diverse and non-understandable.
No, they want Bosnia
Yeah.
as part of Serbia. They want everywhere Serbs live to be a part of Serbia.
That's correct, and that is antithetical to the entire concept of empire.
Right, they're trying to fracture Austro-Hungarian empire.
But they want to build their own.
That's right.
their own.
Go away and leave Bosnia to us. If you'll do that, and
We'll leave you alone for 20 years, then we'll come back for the next chunk.
That's right.
Because that's how that works.
That's
Yes,
exactly
it
right.
is. It is.
That's ultimately, this is an imperial versus nationalistic argument.
It is.
And nationalism ultimately wins, as we know. But only because it destroys everything otherwise.
I think
Wins
we-
that
I don't-
particular conflict.
I don't think
yes.
it was the intention, but ultimately it's the only way it's going to happen. You had to destroy
And
the
that
other.
kind of goes back to, I think, why his ideas were perhaps rooted, even whether he recognized it or not, in that Catholic view, because that's not how he would have gone about it, and it is antithetical to the way the Catholic thoughts on this would go.
Agreed.
You know, it's not that it would destroy everything and build it from the ashes.
It's not the
Because
intention.
again, that's doing a lot of harm
That's
to
right.
do a little bit of good.
It's ultimately the only way it works. But
In that particular area,
but he
it
didn't.
is,
But he
yes.
didn't know it. He doesn't intend that.
It also
But
goes back to
we
why,
know that.
why the representative republic is so difficult.
Yeah.
Is because every form of government, whoever holds the power, becomes a tyranny if the goal is not the good of all the people.
I think
Oh
that's a
my
good
goodness, that's
spot.
exactly right.
I think that's a good spot to stop because we're almost 40 minutes and we don't want to be there.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I like everything you guys said at the end there. Both things that you all had going on. Loved them. I'm going to take one more sip of this good Woodford Reserve bourbon that we got going here.
Got to slurp it.
That's right.
That way they
Good
know
stuff.
you've taken a sip.
Yeah, that's right. The
Good
slurp. I love the
stuff all
slurps.
around. That's right.
Not that I recommend slurping bourbon. Don't get me wrong.
No, you can. The
You
guys
can.
that tour or provide the tours at the distilleries.
Do they
that's
slurp?
it, yeah. You got
Wow.
That's right. Enjoy. Whatever works for you. It's all about enjoyment.
You suck a little bit in and you do the Kentucky
How
chew.
sensualist of you.